All right, welcome to tonight's special presentation by the Clyde Sukeforth chapter of SABR. I am Bruce McClure, the chapter chair, and we always hold our meetings in conjunction with the Gardner-Waterman chapter of SABR in Vermont, Dr. Clayton Truder, chair. Now, I'm not wasting any time tonight. This is one of the most highly anticipated meetings in an awfully long time. So let's go. Jane Leavy has always loved baseball. Her grandmother lived one long, loud foul ball. I'm so excited. I'm going to make a lot of mistakes tonight. Away from Yankee Stadium, the same grandmother who took young Jane to Saks Fifth Avenue to buy her first baseball glove. There it is on the screen if you see it now. It's no coincidence that Leavy was covering the game she loved for the Washington Post by the late 1970s. As a pioneering female sports writer, she eventually turned her talent to books, penning three of the all-time best baseball biographies about three of the all-time best players, Sandy Koufax, Mickey Mantle, and Babe Ruth. But when she went searching for a fourth biographical subject, she realized that baseball had faltered. The Moneyball era of the last 2 decades obsessed over data and slowed the game down to a crawl, often at the expense of the thrills, skills, and surprise. Major League Baseball had begun to address issues too long ignored, yet questions linger. How much have these efforts helped to improve the game and reassert its place in American culture? Jane Leavy is the author of the New York Times bestsellers, The Big Fella, Babe Ruth and the World He Created, The Last Boy, Mickey Mantle and the End of America's Childhood, Sandy Koufax, A Lefty's Legacy, and the novel Squeeze Play, which Entertainment Weekly called the best novel ever written about baseball. She was a staff writer at the Washington Post from 1979 to 1988 and has written for the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, Sports Illustrated, the Los Angeles Times, and more. Jane Leavy, welcome to Northern New England. How are you?
I wish I was in northern New England. I wish I was in my house in Truro, Massachusetts, where it's pretty today and they just refinished my floors.
So you can't walk out of that room.
No, I'm not in Truro now.
Okay.
In Truro, the guys are scraping and
I see.
redoing the floors because they're such a mess.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
oh boy.
Sprucing up around the house. So, let's get this going. Jane, tell us about your genesis of becoming a baseball fan. How did you get to that?
The answer is that my sister loved paper dolls. She cornered the market in paper dolls and all things femme in the family structure. So if I was going to get any attention, it had to be for something else. Now, I wasn't going to get it with paper dolls. My dad was I'm just going to say this right up front, guys. I'm just going to say anything I want because that's the way this book is.
Love it.
Uh, my dad was a very short, fat Jew, um, whose whose underpants, boxer shorts, always extended down below what my mother used to call his walking shorts. I didn't know that walking shorts existed,
No,
but he was actually a great athlete, despite the round mound of renown that surrounded him. And he had great hands at the net, and he grew up on Coogan's Bluff, that craggy outcropping of Manhattan schist that hovered over the Polo Grounds. And his father, who I never met because he died very young, was a bookie and a rum runner. And when my dad was really small and a tow-headed kid, he'd plunk my father's name was Morton Malcolm Leonard Levy. He got the Leonard for surviving the Spanish flu. Apparently, if you survived the Spanish flu, you got an extra name. And
okay.
so at age 2 and 3, he'd plunk him on top of the rumble seat in the Model T or the Model A, whichever one it was, on top of all the booze that he brought back across the border from Canada. And in thanks and in gratitude, my father got the job as being the water boy for the 1927 New York Football Giants. Now, I know that 1927 is known in some parts for other big events, but in fact and in truth, this is the one that matters. My father was descended the heights to the green swale of the polo grounds, and he was hooked. And so was I. I'm maybe in utero, I'm not sure. But I was born prematurely. I was in a big hurry to get to the polo grounds. Um, put him, where that very fall, Bobby Thompson hit the home run and Ralph Branca gave up the home run. I was actually conceived on the day in 1951 when Mickey Mantle hit his first major league home run at Comiskey Park.
So it was fate.
Yes, this was fate. I had no choice in this matter. And then my grandmother, Celia, you people aren't laughing. Only Bruce is laughing. This is problematic. Okay.
No, no. You just keep going.
Okay. My grandmother, Celia Zelda Fellenbaum, lived, which means fallen tree, lived in a building called the Yankee Arms on Walton Avenue in the Bronx. And it was quite literally one long, loud foul ball from home plate. And I have a picture that I could share with you if I could figure out how to do it. You can see it on my website. I was standing up on the third deck of the second Yankee Stadium, and looking right at her building. Now, I was young enough at the time that I thought when I looked out her window that I was looking towards the ballpark. In fact, her parlor faced away from it, but I could hear the sounds, the cheers, the thwacks, all the echoes of everything that was happening. It was just, if Babe Ruth had been alive and giving that speech then, I would have heard the echo of that too. And when I was 5, my grandmother took me by the hand, but I had to get dressed up like a girl, which I didn't really like very much at the time. And I had to put on, well, we didn't wear pantyhose. I wore tights, white tights. And if any of you were New Yorkers, you know that in those days, certain trains they had lattice work kind of seats, and shards of them would break off and pinch you in the back of the leg. Well, they tore my tights, so it was a nightmare. I always had problems when I tried to dress up and be a girl. And she took me by the hand, and we went to Saks Fifth Avenue. Why Saks Fifth Avenue? Because she knew where to go in New York City for the best of everything. And so she assumed that Saks Fifth Avenue would have a baseball glove, the best baseball glove. In fact, they did have a baseball glove. This baseball glove, this
That's fantastic.
motley, horrible, it's it's the Sammy Esposito, gosh, Spalding Form Pocket Model 1161. I think there were 2 of them in the world. I had one and he had the other. And this was on the hand of a mannequin facing Fifth Avenue. And my grandmother goes in the store and says, "I'll have that for my granddaughter." And the flummoxed salesman said, "Madame, it's not for sale." And my grandmother looked at him and said, "I'll have that for my granddaughter." And Sammy and I went home together. And
That is such a New York scene. And
yeah,
having worked at Macy's in New York, I know that's such a New York scene.
so, and then she went to synagogue. She went to a very small synagogue, which at the high holidays, Yom Kippur, which is the serious one, and Rosh Hashanah, which comes first and is the New Year, at the Concourse Plaza Hotel, which is, of course, where the Yankees had their welcome home lunch every year. And where every important bar mitzvah and well, we probably didn't have bat mitzvahs then. Bar mitzvahs took place, and any politician in the Bronx who announced he was running for any office, announced it there. And it was a double, it was the ballroom, it was grand, and it had a balustrade going along the top. If you go to the new Yankee Stadium, you can still see the ballroom windows up the street and, the curved, big, huge glass windows. And I would wrap myself up in the brocade drapes that, were 7 times taller than I was. And with my red Motorola transistor radio, and I would listen to the game while she prayed. And if the radio got a little too loud, she prayed louder. She covered my irreligious sensibilities. And she hid me and Sammy underneath a mink coat, which she wore no matter what the temperature was on Yom Kippur. So
Ugh.
I could bring Sammy with me into the shul. And, it was beschert is what it was in Yiddish. You remember there was a place in the old ballpark where there was a
Mhm.
space between the scoreboard and the rest of the infrastructure, the third deck, where you could for an instant see into the ballpark. Well, from my vantage point in the Concourse Plaza Hotel, where I might add, Babe Ruth stashed his babes. Yogi and Carmen had their first apartment. So did Mickey and Merlin. Um, and they were all studio apartments with pull down beds because, the Yankees weren't going large on the rent, right? And I could see the green of the grass for an instant, just for an instant, when there was no train going by. And I could imagine myself, being on that grass. And I've been imagining it ever since.
And now you're imagining yourself
I'm
as
not, I am not,
commissioner.
I am not imagining myself as commissioner. I'm,
Or have you nominated yourself for commissioner? Which is it now?
I am planning to be commissioner.
Okay, so Jana is planning to be commissioner. Let's talk about this book. Make me
Okay.
commissioner. I know what's wrong with baseball and how to fix it. And I've heard from, I don't know, about 7,500 SABR members now, keeping in mind there are about 7,500 SABR members, that they know exactly what's wrong with baseball and how it should be straightened out, and it should be done this way and that way. And
Yep.
if I had a nickel for every time somebody grabbed me at a convention and said, I've got this idea, who do I get it to? I could probably retire in front of you all. But nobody, I believe, has the chops to state, I know how to do this, other than Jane Levy. So,
It's called chutzpah.
there you go. Or the chutzpah. There you go. So, talk to me about what's wrong with Major League Baseball.
First,
What?
I want to tell you, and I assume all of you, if you haven't yet, will go buy this book. Um, Morgan Sword, otherwise known to you as the EVP, Executive Vice President of Major League Baseball, in charge of everything that happens on the field.
Mhm.
Um, he's also the guy that, retrenched minor league baseball, not so cool, and other, unwieldy things. But he's actually a very smart, interesting guy. And he said to me at the very end, "Are you going to put a ballot at the back? Like a tear-off ballot? You really need to have a tear-off ballot to vote for me for commissioner." There's no tear-off ballot, but it's because the publishing house is cheap. Um, Are you guys gonna report me to the police, to the publishing police? Because
Absolutely not.
I'll shut up
Absolutely
now if
not.
I have
No,
to.
your secret is safe with us.
Um, anyway,
Yeah, talk to me a little bit about what you feel is wrong with Major League Baseball. I've been through the book and made some points myself that I've found were rather interesting that I wanted to bring up tonight. But I'm interested to hear your thoughts and get them out to our members tonight about what you feel is wrong with the game.
well, one, I'm not commissioner, that we can start there. But
Oh,
second,
good. There you go. Okay.
baseball is a reactive industry. And it had laissez-faire leadership, rudderless leadership for a good number of years, decades, that were, like deer in the headlights, in part because of the introduction of the designated hitter in 73, which so traumatized, traditionalists that they couldn't make a move to do anything for almost 50 years. Um, and the problem was that while they diddled, France burned. The world got faster and techier, and other sports that were younger, newer, that didn't have the burden of having to be filial to its past, and having a past that actually, ironically, is responsible for its analytic present. Because after all, baseball has what's called a clean data set. It has the best clean data set because, unlike everybody else, they started collecting all their numbers with Henry Chadwick. So it had an advantage that also hoisted it by its own petard when people started playing around with them with computers. Um, so it got stuck. It just got stuck. People think I got called a curmudgeon the other night. Oh, she just wants it like it always used
I
to be.
saw that. I saw that.
And I was like, really? Am I? Okay. And I wrote back to the guy and said, if you read the book and you still think I'm a curmudgeon, I'll buy you a drink, right? Um, I have suggestions in here that are far more radical than anything, baseball has done. Bill James, who I'm sure all of you know and revere,
Say, remember?
SABR member, SABR original,
Mhm.
it said it at the MIT Sports Analytics Conference in conversation with Morgan Sword and oh, who else was up there on the stage? I forget. It doesn't matter. He said, baseball always had a pitch clock. It was called the sun. And when we reached the gloaming after 3 o'clock lightning, um, you know, umpires would hustle it along, get moving, get your tushies in gear. And it worked. But when lights came in, um, there was no more reason to hustle. And you had at the same time this growing up, this belief that timelessness belonged to baseball and was endemic to baseball, because conceivably a game could go on forever and ever and ever and ever, which I would have liked to have been at, actually, but that's all right. And so they just didn't respond. I mean, basketball, the NBA, and the NFL can make new rules all the time, and they do make new rules all the time,
Mhm.
and nobody cares because, oh, it's going to make the game better, it's going to make it different, or it's going to make something else that we can fight about. Sure. So they come in with the 3-point rule, and Stephen Curry becomes, the talk of the universe. Fine. Now everybody's talking about how people are bored by the 3-point shot, and basketball has become too much the same because it's followed analytics the way baseball has followed analytics. The other trend in here that must be noted, and I was taught about it by Michael Haupert, who is a professor of economics, and he specializes in sports and particularly baseball at the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse. It turns out you can point a finger at two people. One is William Holbert. William Holbert is in the Hall of Fame,
Mhm.
and he was one of the people responsible for the creation and organization of the National League.
Mhm.
And to get those rowdies to agree to some degree of uniformity in roster size and schedule and da 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 da, he had to give them something. What did he give them? He gave them control of territorial marketing rights in perpetuity. Well, there probably wasn't a whole lot to be made in the 1880s when he bestowed that upon them. And not even at the beginning of radio, the first 1921 broadcast, or the 1927 World Series that went coast to coast, or even in the Depression. But little by little, the advertising business got busy in America and was successful in America and started generating money in America. And what it meant was ultimately there weren't teams on the West Coast, of course, as we all know, but geography was determined your fiscal well-being. Now, in 1880s, everybody was a small town, give or take, even New York. But now you project forward, you've got the big mass cities with huge streaming networks that, have deals like the Dodgers for $8.3 billion for 25 years. And then you have the Kansas City Royals making 40 million until their RSN crashed and burned, as so many of them have. So there's an inequity built into to the economics of this industry, which has never been solved and never attended to because it is so fucking controversial. They basically are the only ones that don't have a cap, and they're not going to give up a cap, as Bryce Harper made very clear to Rob Manfred recently. And so they're stuck in permafrost financially. And then this next person you can blame is Dan Okrent. I assume everybody knows that Dan Okrent is the creator of rotisserie league baseball, and that led to fantasy sports, which has led to the fantasy sports gambling industry, which is, I mean, it's this metastasizing thing that occupies a lot of time and a lot of money for a lot of people who I think are really boring, but that's my opinion. And and what he did is he basically figured out a way to teach future general managers how to put together a team using a finite set of financial parameters, $260. In Dan's world, he wanted to be more equitable than major league franchises, so they all start with the same amount of money, and the smartest people win, or the luckiest, or both. Um, but that's what today's general managers were weaned on, was looking how to construct a roster and assign value to not just to a human being, but to a collection of statistics. So you didn't need a catcher who had 80 RBI. You needed maybe two catchers with 40 each. And the allocation of funds as attached to a human being became a thing. And so I went up to Dan at a Cape League game. We're friends and go to games together at Cape Cod. And I said, "You fucked baseball." And he goes, "You mean when I put my hands around its neck like this and said, 'Die, motherfucker'?" And I went, "Yes, exactly then." So um, baseball got stuck. It got stuck with a system, an economic system they can't change, and they did not progress when they could have made rule changes at a time when people, before computers, when people wouldn't have been so insanely angry and be able to chop it all apart. Um, and the world passed them by. The world just passed them by. It was Theo who said to me, I call him the czar of making baseball fun again. It was 2021, I think, when there was three balls in play in 3 minutes and 52 seconds. You know, he said, you got a 6-year-old, you have 12 minutes to sell a game to a 6-year-old, and that's what he's going to see? Impossible.
Makes perfect sense.
If only the sun had set earlier. Um, you get it, yeah, daylight savings, we'll work it out. So they did the first absolutely necessary thing. I was not personally traumatized by the pitch clock. I was delighted, despite the objection of many of my best sources. I'm delighted they got rid of the shift. I know that baseball's a game of adjustments, and that sooner or later, the libertarian baseball freaks argued that baseball players would adjust and they would start going the other way to beat the shift. Well, guess what? You can't go the other way on a 100-mile-an-hour sinker up under your hands. You try. I mean, you can't do it. And what's more, they're not taught even how to think about doing it. Chase DeLauder, who's a young guy, who's had the worst run of bad luck of any minor leaguer I've ever heard of in my life. He was the first round draft choice of the Guardians in 2022. He's been injured ever since. But I asked him, I said, I mean, that guy can really clobber the ball. Beautiful left-handed swing, albeit one that's idiosyncratic because it's a scissor swing. Um, I said, did any coach ever say to you, you might choke up, God forbid, choke up, um, and you go, oh no, that would mess up your swing. And the last element is that where analytics has made other games more exciting, it's made baseball dull. We all know about the three true outcomes, a third of all
Mhm.
at bats, and either a home run, a strikeout, or a walk. Well, in football, analytics has said go for it on fourth down. The chances of making it are good. In baseball, it says swing for the seats. If you strike out, we won't get pissed off at you. Don't worry about being embarrassed. Take your walks. It's become it's lost its texture, it's lost its subtleties, it's lost the things that, in my view, made it great. I don't know about you guys. I don't even look up at home runs anymore. There's so fucking many of them. It's like, please, somebody do something else. And how do you get that back? How do you get the variability in roster composition, the variability in lineup composition? They're all the same. It's all the same. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're this is amazing stuff. But you in writing this book, you talk to a lot of past ball players, old timers, for lack of better term.
Yeah.
Now, what did they have to say?
Well, first of all, I'm going to have to get up and get a glass of water in a minute. Well, I hope you'll excuse me, Betty
That'll
the
be
dog.
just fine.
Betty the dog, who is in the book, may come and entertain you in my absence, but
Perfect.
um, uh, well, they have very different views on it. I mean, what everybody said, and this is old guys, young guys, pitchers, hitters, whatever. Baseball has lost its human element. And I kept hearing that. I would
Mhm.
go to dugout to dugout, and then somebody would suddenly say, the human element is gone. Where did it go? Well, if you make every decision based on probabilities that 9 times out of 10, Rajay Davis is going to not hit a home run in the seventh game of the 2016 World Series, and that's a good way to make a decision based on that. What you preclude is the possibility that he might do the impossible. And that's what made baseball, that with that phrase, go to the ballpark and see something that's never happened before. Uh, I think that that's how analytics dulled down the game. And I mean, there's so many examples of it. I was talking to Dave Roberts the other day in the dugout at Camden Yards, that Shohei had stepped up to fill in for Glasnow, who was hurt again. And I said, I really had tortured him about taking Kershaw out of his perfect game, first game he threw in 2022.
Mhm.
It killed him to do it. He hated doing it. He probably would have gotten fired if he hadn't done it. Um, because he has to report to bosses and there's so much money and, invested in that left arm. But it is also true that if you take away those moments, what is there to root for? What draws you to the ballpark? So I said to Dave, if the next day, if the headline had been Clayton Kershaw, the greatest left-handed pitcher of his generation, who has fought off injuries for, the last 10 years and persevered, but couldn't pitch in the playoffs because his arm was hurt last year, comes out and throws a perfect game in his first appearance in cold weather in chilly Minneapolis, wouldn't that be a reason to go out to the ballpark? You might see that, as opposed to the headline being Clayton Kershaw was pulled after 7 innings of perfect baseball.
I think that's the beauty of leagues like the Cape Cod League or the New England College League, the Futures League, things like that, is that you can still go to the ballpark and see something that you probably have never seen before, or something amazing could happen, because I don't believe that these players, maybe I'm wrong, correct me if I'm wrong,
You're wrong.
that these players are watched as
Yes, they are.
strongly.
Yeah,
They are.
that's part of the tragedy of what's happened in the Cape League, and it's gotten worse in the couple of years since
Oh,
I
learn something here.
started talking about it. The NIL money, and has made coaches very wary of sending their players to the Cape League because they think they'll go to the Cape League and some scout for some other college is going to be standing there with a wad of cash, and it happens, right? And changing the date of the draft means that a lot of kids just leave early, just goodbye. So where teams really used to be teams, they're not anymore. 2 years ago, Katuitt, a favorite word to say out loud, lost 40 players in one summer. Now, my Orleans Firebirds only lost 19, and that was the least in the league. But they're calling in people the coaches, they're not called managers. I don't know why. The coaches are like out there beating the bushes, calling, Division II schools and say, you got a lefty you can send up for 5 days? I mean, that's what it's been reduced to. So it depends on really good management to try to put together an actual team. I mean, Kelly Nicholson, who is the coach of yes, the Kettleers. You are quite correct, and I have
Perry's right.
about them.
Kettleers.
Yeah, you're right. Kelly Nicholson. I was sitting there, and he put on a shift, and after it was, vetoed by MLB, and I said, "You put on the shift. Why? Why?" And he said, "I want to win."
There you go. Did you need to get a drink of water? You had mentioned you were.
Do you mind very much, everybody?
Not at all.
A drink of water.
Not at
Not
all.
going to be gin or vodka or anything bad.
So this is our intermission. We will be back with Jane Leavy, author of Make Me Commissioner. I Know What's Wrong with Baseball and How to Fix It, in just a minute. But if you want to get in line to ask a question of our presenter tonight, Megan Hanna knows what to do. Go down to the bottom of the screen and hit the reactions button. You'll see another button marked raise hand. Raise your hand. We'll get you in line to ask questions of our presenter tonight. And I'm going to come back with a question for her in just a minute. We will get to your questions, but I want to get people in line right away for this. This has been a good time so far, and it is going to be I think, an informative and entertaining session. It was one of the most highly anticipated sessions that we've ever had, and it is actually our biggest session. Nearly 90 folks.
How big are we
this evening? What's that?
How big are we?
Oh, we had nearly 90.
Wow. Oh, wow. That's really nice, guys. I really appreciate it.
Now, we have a lot of questions for you tonight, Jane, but I want to get...
Can I tell the Kettleers story first?
Tell the Kettleers story, yes.
Because it's pertinent. It's not just goofy. It's both goofy and...
Well,
Jesse Cole, the man who created the Savannah Bananas, was an assistant coach for the Katuitt Kettleers. And it was while sitting on the end of the bench during a Katuitt Kettleers game that he suddenly went to himself, "Oi, I'm bored." To which I replied, "Everybody's bored in Katuitt. It's not just you." But one thing that runs through the book is that baseball needs to entertain more. And by that, I do not mean having players break into tap dance routines on the mound. I do not mean doing backflips in center field. I think there are other ways they can do it and make a very concerted effort to do it without debasing themselves. But MLB is very defensive about the Bananas, and they weren't at all happy when they were enshrined in Cooperstown. But you got to give it to them. They saw a problem and they addressed it. They saw something that, that people were disaffected and found a way to bring them to a goofy, stupid game. But if you've noticed lately, and I said to Mike Rizzo, how about music throughout the game? He goes, oh my God, no. And I said, baseball's got to get over itself a little bit here, Mike. And guess what? They're now playing music between every at bat.
Mhm.
They didn't do that last year. That is new. And where did they get it? The bananas.
Do you feel the bananas are debasing at all?
Um, I think it would be debasing for Major League Baseball to adopt their stupid rules. I
Okay.
mean, I I don't want baseball to. The problem is baseball has sacrificed so much about what made it great already. It's not like they need to do more, get rid of more of their essential self, if that's an English sentence.
It
Um,
is.
um, but they need to do what Jesse did. Fans first, entertainment always. They just took their fan base for granted. I mean, $18 beers? Really? Are you kidding me? I mean, and they think people are going to have more than one? It's too expensive. And guess what? Somebody said to me recently, you're dying, don't you? I went, well, gee, thanks.
Ha!
But what he meant by that was that the generation of fans, some of you may be in that generation, I certainly am, that has sustained baseball while it's been wandering in the wilderness, having its Ezekiel moment, uh, is old. It's old. The fan base has gotten younger, thank God, but it's not young enough. And the first thing I would do as commissioner is let every kid accompanied by an adult get in free.
Yes. Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
those swaths of empty seats, in every game, this is not a good look. It's not a good look. It's not good business. Imagine the PR coup it would be if Major League Baseball called a press conference and said, you know what, we've been thinking about it, and we really do want you to come out to the ballpark. We want to make it easier. We want to make it more affordable. And we want to teach a new generation how to appreciate it. So here's what we're going to do. Every 10-year-old and younger gets in free. So I asked my friend Michael Halpert to go run some numbers, because that's what you do in the numbers world. And he took the Cubs menu from 2023. If you took a 10-year-old and say you had a $12 seat or some such, I'm not giving them the luxury suites. And you bought them a small hot dog and a small soda and a popcorn and a cap, it would have cost the Cubs $4 million in 2023. Now, that's not a small amount of money to me. I don't, I'm not sneezing at that, but it is chump change to every single fucking owner in Major League Baseball. I don't care
Absolutely.
how much they want to lie about it. They've got it. And at the same time, the Cubs were paying Jason Hayward 21 million to play for the Dodgers.
There you go. Hey, let's get some questions from some of the audience here tonight. Now, my list doesn't go chronologically, so I'm just going to take it top to bottom. First up tonight for questions for Jane Leavy is the inimitable Craig Gerritsen from the Elysian Fields chapter in Northern New Jersey. Craig, what's going on, man? How you doing?
I'm doing great. Hi, Jane. How are you?
I'm good, babe. How are you?
Good. One thing I think we could learn from the Savannah Bananas is it's kind of like the Harlem Globetrotters, where the game is silly, but it's also fun, and we could take the fun and leave out the silly, and I think we'd have a better product. But one statistic that's been bothering me watching baseball, since 2017, there are now more foul balls than balls in play per at bat. And
that's in the book. It's in the book.
It's crazy.
Yep, it's in the book.
It would be like if in football, like every every other play was a false start. Like how soon would you give up on football if if nothing happened half the time, or now it's a quarter of the time, there's a foul ball. So is there anything we can do about this? And it's interesting because in 1901, they had this same problem and they said, okay, we're going to make the first 2 foul balls strikes. So that's how they fixed it back then. And now we have these 10 or 12 pitch at bats, which are great. As a baseball fan, you know what the guy's doing. But if you're a casual fan, it drives you crazy to just watch the same guy put balls in play and nothing happen.
Bill James and I had an argument about this. You know, should we limit the number of foul balls and before you get called out? You know, I'm enough of a traditionalist that I love watching somebody extend an at bat through pure skill. And I don't think I put in a limitation rule. I think I brought it up. Bill wanted 2, just, 2 additional foul balls, and then you're out. I think that's crazy. I would go for 5. That would be my rule. And, like I said, they have to get over themselves. Their dignity is not so precious. It's a game, guys. It's a big business that needs to be sold as a game.
And the other problem now is foul territory is, 3 steps to the wall. So it's not like the Oakland Coliseum where you can catch those foul balls.
As Derek Jeter proved in 2001.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah. I miss that ballpark. I loved that ballpark. I know nobody else did, but I did.
My father was older when I was born. My dad was 60 when I was born. And I remember him regaling, and I was born in 1968. So he regaled me with stories about Shibe Park in Philadelphia when he was little, and how he loved that ballpark. So I can imagine your love for old Yankee Stadium. Hey, next up is a friend that I don't see often enough. My friend Perry Barber is here. Perry.
Hey, Perry.
How have you been?
I can't see you, Perry, because I have there's a band going all the way. There you are. Hi.
We got to get her to unmute. And I might go back to her if she's having trouble muting. Let's give her a second to hit the button. It happens. Do you want me to come back to you, Perry? Okay, I'll come back to you in just a minute. Next up is Bob McPhail. Bob, how you doing tonight, my friend? Please unmute. We are experiencing technical difficulties with people unmuting tonight. Hang on a second. Bob? Bob, I think he's having trouble with his...
I just unmuted.
There's Perry. Go.
Okay, Perry.
Jane.
Yes. Hi.
Have you heard of the new Women's Pro Baseball League?
Yes, I have.
Well, your talk about the fact that baseball has, over the past 100+ years of its history, has basically embedded some evils and vicissitudes that probably cannot be overcome at this point. So I was wondering if you had considered putting in a bid to become commissioner of the new Women's League, because that way you could be creating a template for something so much better and more streamlined and honest for the Women's League.
Question.
And I think that they will need that and welcome it. So I'm hoping that you'll think about it at least.
I think Kim Ng would be a better choice than me.
She just signed on as commissioner of a new softball league.
Well, I know. I think she could do both, frankly. I'm honored by the suggestion, first of all. I think I was pretty negligent in here, to be honest. I regret it, but I don't think I'm wrong. I couldn't deal with that whole subject of the new Women's League, because obviously that is major change. It wasn't available to me as a young girl back in Roslyn, Long Island, when I pitched for the Blue Jays of Roslyn, the team that's still going. And they gave me not a full uniform, just the cap, please. And I was the person that pitched mop up. But I could say I played Little League.
Was
Yeah,
that before or after Maria Pepe?
I think it was before.
Wow.
Yeah,
So
I'm old. Like I said, I'm old.
you're the original trendsetter. Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, there wasn't much ink about girls playing baseball back then.
Yeah. And, you know, the longer I pay attention to it, the more stories I uncover and hear about women that get no credit at all. They're just basically missed in the history of time, but who, without whose efforts, the women that did make names for themselves and go on to become a little more well known and celebrated, without those original women, the other women who followed them wouldn't be in the positions they are or were. And so,
One of them was Bill Lee's aunt.
yes, Annabelle Lee.
Yes.
Yes.
Annabelle Lee. I have pictures of her, whom he describes as a shit-balling lefty, who taught him everything he knows about being a shit-balling lefty.
I love that.
And he would be a good commissioner for women's baseball. He loves it. He goes
Yep.
down to all the tournaments, and
I hope he's feeling better. He was supposed to be down at the Boston Red Sox women's camp last January, and he couldn't make it because he was ill. But I agree. And by the way,
he's had his heart fixed. He's fine.
oh, good. If anybody is in the neighborhood of Fenway Park on Friday morning, I'm going to be umpiring the women's reunion game there, starting at 8:30 all day. So
Mazel tov.
It's a shame I have a job and a nasty addiction to food and shelter, or I'd get down there. So there was actually earlier this year on the only commercial television station here in New Hampshire, WMUR, there was a little feature story on Bill Lee and his heart procedures that he had done at Dartmouth Hitchcock Medical Center. And last I saw, he is spectacularly well and doing great. And still run around promoting baseball wherever he possibly can. So,
and you know, he would be a great choice because his commitment to women's baseball is real. He has sponsored a women's team in the New England that he sends to the MSBL and other tournaments. He's been doing that for 20 years. And he has come down to the big women's tournament in Sarasota that Sousa Pay started, the AAG PBL player who just died a couple of months ago. But Sue was great. She would get Bill to come down every year and coach a team or work with the players and, you know, draw fans to the ballpark. So yeah, he's a good second choice.
And just so you know, it's in the book, but he had a completely occluded circumflex artery in his heart. That's that goes all around the back, and so a lot of the early imaging didn't see it. And needless to say, the Savannah Bananas doctors in Savannah didn't, they just said it's a small electrical problem. And that's why he kept passing out. But two male doctors, right-handed male doctors, tried to it out, and they couldn't do it. Why? Their hands were too big. He needed, as he says, and it's in these pages, he needed a little lefty from Lahore, female physician, female doctor who saved his life.
That's awesome.
Wow.
That's awesome. Hey, let's keep it going here. Next up is the chief editor of the Clyde Sukeforth chapter's new newsletter that'll be coming out next year, Megan Hanna. You're up, girl. How you doing?
I'm fine, thank you.
Hey,
Hi,
glad
Dave.
you're here.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. So I have the book. I've read the book.
Downstairs.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
Yes. It was great. I knew going in that it would be interesting, but it was actually a lot funnier than I was expecting. And
I'm a lot funnier than people are expecting.
Yes, you are. You're very, very funny. So I actually wanted to ask you a question about the book itself, because going into it, I thought I was going to be reading a book about this is what's wrong with baseball and how we could fix it. What I wasn't expecting is that it was a book about your journey to figure out what's wrong with baseball and how do we fix it. And I was wondering, did you always plan to write the book that way? Or is there a draft on your computer somewhere where Jane Leavy isn't a presence in the book?
No, I knew from the beginning it would be first person. What happened was, as you all remember, in the fall of 2021 and still in, so to some degree, spring of 2022, all the headlines were baseball's dead, baseball's dying, baseball's broken, baseball's fucked, baseball should be federalized. That was the New York Times opening day, 2022. And so I thought that was the book I was going to be writing. Then, they tapped Theo to do something. And publishing, this is boring. There's no way I could write the book that I set out to write in time before the new rules were formulated and put into play. So I recognized by, June, something like that, 2022, that I had to change. I knew what the rules were going to be because they'd been testing them all over the place. So it wasn't a secret. It was pretty clear what the early changes were going to be. And so when that happened, I had to pivot. I threw out 2 years of writing, and that's a lot of fun. And started over and just said, okay, I will make this now instead a travels with Jane without the dog through baseball. Betty only gets to come to the Cape League. And I would go to new places, Driveline. I would go to the analytics conference, the MIT analytics conference. I would go to high school tournaments where, and showcases. I would go to see, the cohort of Black former major leaguers like Marquise Grissom, who have been working to try to, undo the mess that Major League Baseball has made by ignoring the fact that got to be 6% of the major leaguers are now Black, as opposed to the nearly 20% it was. I went to get lessons in how to use the new bags from Ron Washington. I went to dugouts and talked to, Dusty and Cash, and Dusty recommended talking to Bregman, who of course is, radioactive in some parts of the country still. But if Dusty, Dusty is the most fully human maybe in the game, as far as I'm concerned. And I'm glad he's going to be coaching Nicaragua. But I said, who's the best guy to talk to about how analytics has affected hitting, and who can tell me the story from a personal point of view? He said Bregman, and he's really smart and he's really good. So I spent time with him. I spent time with JP Crawford, sorry, at Driveline. And I just went from place to place to place, and then back to the Cape League, which was sort of my touchstone, as it were, and to torture Dan Okrent as much as I possibly could. And
Nice.
yes. And I started writing that because I went all the way through the 2023 season. In December of 2023, I handed in the first draft on August 31st, 2004. I didn't hear a word from the editor or the publisher until November 6th, which was the day after I had my left knee replacement. So I didn't really get back to work for another couple of months. And then I was writing all the way up until August, because it's in sports writing, when you're writing a game story in the press box, you're doing what's called writing running. You're writing while a story is unfolding, and there's a technique for how to do it, unless you're, can write 800 words in 2 minutes, which I can't. And so I was basically writing running and how a whole industry was evolving. And every time, 3 more guys shredded their elbows, I had to go back in and change it. And every time there was a new study published about Tommy John surgeries, I had to go back and, insert it. Every time Manfred opened his mouth and said something gloriously stupid, I had to go back in and add it. I just don't know what comes over him sometimes, but his announcement in February at during spring training, that we should all expect a lockout on December 2nd, 2026 at the expiration of the current 6-year CBA was about the stupidest thing I've ever. How is that a way to entice fans? How do you say to people, yes, we want you to come to our ballparks. We want you to eat our very, very, very iffy sushi, at $56, whatever, and our 1999 Aaron Judge burgers. But don't get too involved. Don't get too caught up. Don't care too much, because we are going to disappoint you in December 2026. And and then he went on to say, and it's really a good thing, because it's like using a 22 as opposed to a nuclear weapon. That will not be happening on my watch.
Thank you.
Promoted to his level of incompetence is what my father would say. He also came out a couple of weeks ago, or maybe it was a couple of days ago. I read about he says, I can't wait to pick the new expansion teams so that that will be my legacy. I'm like, wait a minute, that's up to you now?
Yeah. Yeah, let's pick some more small markets that won't be able to sustain
Sure.
a baseball team, right? And then create, conferences that create all of baseball history. But okay, yeah.
Jane's gonna lose it right here on camera tonight. Next up is Stephen Meyerson. Stephen, how are you this evening? Unmute for me, please, if you can. Here is hoping. There he is. Go.
Yeah, excellent meeting, excellent guest as often. I would say if I'm running Major League Baseball, if I'm an owner, a commissioner, would I agree that anything needs to be changed? The franchise sale prices keep going up. No one even wants to sell. The ticket prices are higher. Don't even need to hire a ticket staff, since most of that is done by the secondary market. The streaming channels will pay anything, even for a small audience, Apple Plus or Prime Video or whoever else is competing against the legacy of cable and broadcast. What about the gambling? I'm even getting money. People are betting on the next pitch. We get people to make parlay bets, which is the worst odds for the bettor. And last, we build stadiums to make stadium revenue and higher parking revenue. If I'm Morgan Sword, Manfred, a team owner, why do I want to change anything?
If you're Bob Nutting, do you want to change anything? If you're, Stuart Sternberg, you're selling out. If you're the Brewers are, the best example of that, it's possible to actually form and create a great team without having to break the bank completely. I think that my answer to what you're saying is, a lot of what you're saying is indisputably accurate, but it's a wealthy, what makes this tragic, it's a wealthy but unhealthy industry. It's $12 billion, and the kids can't play nice in the sandbox. And as to the gambling, I mean, there are three issues that really bother me that I've focused on. One of them is the gambling, because my grandfather was the bookie and the rum runner. I think it is so antithetical to and disingenuous. I mean, for 100 years, beat the breast and say we're the sport that doesn't tolerate betting, and we have our signs in our clubhouses. But as soon as the Supreme Court legalizes it in 2018, we go, oh, there's money to be made. I think it's inevitable that they did what they did. I don't know how they could have avoided it. It doesn't mean they need to use all the $1 billion to enrich themselves. How about using that money for a good purpose? How about using it to create major league training complexes? That's the word you have to use now. Facilities in every major league city. So maybe some American Black kids and Hispanic kids can get to play baseball, because it costs so much money now to play baseball as a kid that nobody but rich white kids can do it. And you're foreclosing the possibility of having any diversity other than the very large contingent of Latin American players, which is 28% this year. And they're great. They're enthusiastic, they're demonstrative, they're great. And, you know, I'm really tired of the unwritten rules and da 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 da. You know, they're fun. But how about giving some American kids a chance?
That is a spot on, perfect statement about the way it's going for people of color in this sport. And I'm glad we got that on camera. I'm really glad we got that on our recording this evening.
You know, it got, by 2015, 2016, they started to get the idea that there was a problem. And they turned moldy Dodgertown into the Jackie Robinson Training Complex. You know, and I said that there's a guy named Darwin Penny, who's a scout for the Royals, and did head their academy for a number of years. You know, the question is this a show pony, or, you know, is it, you know, or is it the beginning of a real trend towards making those facilities available? I couldn't read Perry's comment. It disappeared.
There are such complexes for inner city disadvantaged youth scattered throughout the United States, but not nearly enough. Spot on. She's exactly correct. Compton, California has a great facility, she said.
That was the first MLB facility. It's where J.P. Crawford learned how to hit down on the ball.
There you go. Hey, next up is David Kaiser. David, how are you doing tonight?
Fine, thank you.
Hi, David.
Hi, Jane. Nice to have you here. There's a lot I could say. Maybe I'll get a second comment, but the main thing I want to talk about is something you did not talk about, which I think is a huge problem for the game right now. When we're watching a game and the pitcher throws a pitch, we know if it was a strike. At least 95% of the time, the batter knows whether it was a strike, and the catcher does. But much too often, the umpire doesn't know that it was a strike. And we know that because we see where the pitch was. This is an absolute disgrace. Now, wait a second. Let me finish because I want to make another point. And if they just automated it, I think it would help the hitting problems a lot. It would be a consistent strike zone. The batters would get used to it. They wouldn't be under pressure to swing at a pitch that isn't a strike. There wouldn't be so many foul balls. So, all right, over to you.
The box isn't accurate.
It's more accurate than the umpire.
Box is created by television. It is not the box that, let's say, a general manager uses that actually tells you what is a strike and not a strike. It is there for audiences because audiences like to think they know what happened, and they don't. So the real change should be to either put the real one up there or not have it at all. Because
put the real one up there. If there's a better box, fine, put it up there.
Not a better box. It's the real box,
correct
as
box.
Opposed to the faux box.
A more correct box. Okay.
Yes.
But it's not possible. There's another big problem with this, which is that 50 years ago, they made a rule that umpires had to be tall. And even though I gather that rule is no longer there, it's still the case. And tall men have a much bigger problem calling a low pitch.
Well, I would say that's more a problem with the strike zone as it is currently defined.
Well, maybe.
With the tall umpires.
The other thing I really would like to say, though, is that this is where I'm differing with you somewhat. To hear you talk about people need a reason to go to the ballpark, I'd think that attendance was around 1968 levels. And I just checked the attendance figures while we're talking here. And although there are a few teams in big trouble, most of the teams appear to be doing just fine as far as that goes.
What are the figures this year? How much is it up?
I can't tell you how much it's up, but I can tell you that there are teams that are averaging over 40,000 and that a hell of a lot of teams are averaging over 30,000. And that's a lot.
The problem with what you're saying, and that's good news, right?
Yeah.
Major League Baseball used the figure that it increased after 23, I'm sorry, in 23, it went up 11% to people coming to see the new rules. You know how much it increased last year?
How much?
1%. So
Wow.
there was a newness factor. All I can say is it's an issue, it's an economic issue because baseball has such a huge inventory of seats and games. There's a reason NFL games, sell out.
Sure.
So again, that comes back to it's not a good look having playing in empty stadiums. I had a conversation with Jim Palmer the day that the Orioles clinched their first division title. So that would have been 2023 and
Mhm.
since 2014, I think, if I got it right. It's they were going down in the elevator to go down to the field for for post-game ceremonies, and somebody said, what's the attendance today? Oh, they sold 22,000. And he's like, 22,000? How is that possible? This is the franchise, coming back, and only 22,000. Well, after the, years of losing, that's what you get. The next year, where the last year when the Orioles, won the division, but then sucked in the playoffs just as they were eliminated in the first round, just as they were in 2023, 40,000 people came. That was a very big number, and that was a great thing. And you know what happened? And Jim was like heartsick about this. He said, our players didn't even go out on the field to celebrate with the fans. Nothing. Nada. So, and then he said, so when does the fan matter?
Oof, that's a good question
Thank
right
you.
there. That's a good question. Let's keep it going with the fans. We got Mark Cantor's up next. Mark, unmute, man. How you doing?
Fine. How are you doing?
I'm fantastic. Great to see you.
I got in late on the conversation, but I don't know if you know, Jane. I think about 85 years ago, Pal Crowsley of the Cincinnati Reds had an off. He suggested, it was during the Depression. He said, "You know what we ought to do? We ought to just have double headers on Saturday and Sundays. People don't show up during the week anyway. It costs us money to run, and just have, and obviously he was saying, and we only would need four starting pitchers, need a little bit of a bullpen. Well, the NCAA, as I understand, they only play games Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday for baseball. And I thought that, we talk about an inventory of games and all that. I've thought, what if we just, if again, you're being commissioner for today, for whatever, what if you were commissioner? So we can think of these crazy things. What if we had a 4-day week, four starting pitchers, relievers, and all that, but then we have 3 days to rest up, or we have time, or if there's rainouts or whatever, to rest up. You play a 100-game season. The players will be more well rested, and there'd be less of a chance to have injuries. And since postseason's somewhat important, to go into the postseason, that would be my, obviously that's how I would solve some of the problems. It doesn't solve the endemic problem of pitchers, pitchers having to have Tommy John surgeries, or thoracic outlet surgeries. But, if you could get to a point where the owners and the players say, 100-game season's much more manageable than 162. But obviously, money aside, that'll never happen. But that was my thought, and it was only because Pal Crowsley thought of this in 1939.
In 1939, people wanted to go sit in a ballpark for 8 hours. Ain't happening today. The
Well,
attention
I'm not,
span.
what I'm saying is there wouldn't be double headers.
Oh, okay. I thought you were saying double
You
headers.
you play Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, like the NCAA does. Play a 4-game set.
Okay, I understand what you're saying. Jim Cott recommends having, basically says, well, the problem is that Major League Baseball used to have the summer to itself, and training camp for football and the NBA finals have all encroached on baseball's time territory. He thinks it should begin at Memorial Day and end at Labor Day, with the playoffs all it's in September, and he would make it 7-inning games. I could see going to that kind of schedule, but it's never going to be acceptable to owners. I mean, it makes a certain amount of sense. I would not go for 7-inning games. I'm sorry. That's
Same.
a bridge too far for me. There are a lot. Dave Roberts suggested having, every Monday is off, no matter what. Give a manager a chance to reset the bullpen and the starting rotation. That the one day of complete rest would make such a difference to him as a manager. And look what happened to them last night. Blake Trinan is acting his age, or maybe he's just too upset about Charlie.
Well, I'm a Phillies fan, so
Right.
I was very, very happy when I woke up this morning.
It was an incredible game to watch.
All right, we're going to take 2 more. I've got 2 more hands up. We're going to take those 2, and that's going to be it for this evening. Next up is our friend Dan Mason. Dan, how you doing tonight?
Hey, Jane. Hey,
Hi.
hey, Bruce. Thank you. So I am a Cape League alum as well. Born vice president and secretary. Very, very proud that I was one of the votes for that new ballpark and had a little hand in that. And I'm also a former scout. I kind of wanted to ask this about economics. Taxpayers, citizens, communities, states are expected to foot the bill for large infrastructure costs, and those taxpayers' children are not financially allowed to play the game. On the other hand, you spoke about talking to Marquise. I find it stunning how just, having a hand in youth sports here and there, how hard it is to get a field. And in certain communities, the baseball fields are now soccer fields and can't get a permit, and that's part of the issue too. And I just wondered if you had any more thoughts about those economic forces kind of converging, because they're both economics.
Johnny Gomes, of all people, had an interesting idea. He thinks Major League Baseball should buy Little League and invest in it, and be responsible for providing the facilities and coaching, which would be a great improvement over coaches. There's a guy from Driveline, Devin Morgan, who runs their youth program, who is a fanatic about overuse of little kids' arms. There was a kid recently who was left in 2+ innings. He gave up 22 runs, and they just kept having him throw and throw. And these kinds of excesses are going on every day because the people who are the coaches don't have to, have any qualifications. They don't have to pass any tests. They don't have to have any training. Nada, zero. And if I was my mother now, I wouldn't have let me pitch like that. I would have been the kid left in there to give up 22 runs. I think Johnny Gomes' idea is not entirely stupid, to be perfectly honest. Clearly, the lack of facilities and the space that baseball facilities take versus hanging a hoop in an alley are a huge issue. But I think that with some effort and cold hard cash, it's going to cost money. Bluntly said, it's gonna cost money. But you've got metastasizing complexes. There was a perfect game I have to go to the book and see if I can find it. Unfortunately, I left out an index, so I can't cite all the things I know are in there. But there was a tournament in Houston. It's an annual event. There were 11,000 kids playing on, hold on, I gotta find this. I'm sorry.
Yes,
Can you give me a second while I find this?
absolutely.
Okay. I have to go to the old draft of the book. Levy, final read. Okay.
Let me guess, those kids were all playing on turf in 95-degree heat, hot enough to cook an egg.
Yep. You got it. Now I have to go. I have to find Houston. All right.
That's a serious thing too, with, you know, being in that heat for 3 hours unhydrated.
Oh, tell
Right.
me about it. I have umpired those things many times and had serious concerns
Okay.
about.
All right, here it is. PG's 2024 Houston Super Regional NIT Tournament for teams 6 and under to 14 and under drew 11,658 players, requiring 350 umpires and 150 baseball fields at 32 different complexes. I mean, yeah, that perfect game can put that together, you know. The town board can't do that. But those things exist. And it's no wonder the kids are drawn to them. Baseball has become a country club sport. It's the most expensive of the top 3 sports to play now, which is shocking. And it's over $1,000 and some odd cents. I can find this if you want me to, the exact figure. It's from the this year's Aspen Institute project play numbers. So, you know, it's crazy. It's just, I mean, yes, the economics are nuts. Hey, Dave Rubin, I like your background.
Yeah.
Right. He's the last one for the night. Doug Rubin with the cool background there. Very nice touch.
I just
Go get
ordered
him,
that
man. You're
book.
up.
I am such a fan, and I missed most of this. I will definitely buy your book.
Thank you.
I love those first 3 biographies as a CPA, what you did about the Christy Walsh financial analysis. Brilliant. I mean, brilliant stuff. And thank you. Just thank you for writing. I hope you write many more books.
Well, you know, part of the reason for this, and I think it's something else that baseball has to come to grips with. And I knew that there'd be a zillion suggestions and arguments against what I'm suggesting, and other suggestions that would be, I'd go, yeah, that's a good, better idea, no problem. I just wanted to engender conversation. That was my, you know, that's the real point. But the other thing that's really true is that after I finished Babe Ruth, who almost killed me, I I looked around for another, you know, big name personality, you know, life story that demanded telling, and not to be too highfalutin about it, but and I couldn't find one because most of the old guys, the dead guys, have been done, forgive the expression, done to death.
Yep.
I have a personal code that I won't write on the same subject that a friend has written, no matter whether I think they've done it well or not. Or I won't do a book that I think has been done as well as can be. Like Richard Ben Kramer's DiMaggio book can't be improved upon. You
For
can
the kid, yeah.
you can dislike it, you can argue with it, you know. But I knew Joe DiMaggio, and he's the guy that Richard described. And it killed Richard to write it, to tell you the truth. In fact, he died not that long after. Baseball doesn't know how to make stars, doesn't recognize them, doesn't promote them. There are people, including Tom Glavine, who you know, believe in conspiracy theories and think that it's intentional, that they don't really want stars because they'd have to pay them more. But they're not producing the personalities, and they're not allowing the skills and the triumphs to exist, to flourish, that are integral to stardom. I don't think I'm ever going to see another perfect game. Do you think you're going to see another perfect game? I doubt it. You know, I was very glad that Davy Roberts gave Yamamoto a chance to finish, even if they, though they lost. And I kind of think it's because I was hectoring him in the locker in the dugout before the game about over Clayton Kershaw and Rich Hill. But the sense that baseball is theater, and it has its roots in entertainment and in traveling, troops of troubadours and players of vaudeville has been, people have forgotten that that's where it got its start.
Mhm.
And there is an obligation to entertain. And all, players used to know that. They used to know that. And if you go and you look at what A.J. Ellis and Rich Hill said about that, Rich would talked about it, I think it was his third time at Fenway, when he would step off the mound, now you can't do that anymore, to milk a moment and let the drama build before he threw the next pitch. And it was quite intentional. And it wasn't just so that he could take a blow. He doesn't throw hard enough to need to take another blow. But he recognized this is drama and it's part of my job to make it more dramatic. And you don't get that when every decision is dictated by algorithms that can't measure that stuff. Algorithms are really great. They're invaluable. They're not going away. I enjoy learning things from analytics. I understand why why people crave the next one, but not to the exception or the of what the players call the human element. And that's what's really lacking in my experience.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Dave. Was your Doug or Dave?
Doug.
Doug, I'm sorry, Doug. Great cover.
Make me commissioner. I know what's wrong with baseball and how to fix it. Jane Levy, tell us how to find that book.
Oh, easy. Amazon. I hate Amazon, but Amazon, Barnes and Noble. If you have an independent bookstore, I would infinitely prefer you go there. Not only make me commissioner, make me a bestseller.
Yes. We expect to see a spike in sales for the book after our meeting tonight.
Absolutely.
And I got to tell you, I can't thank you enough for doing this. This
Oh,
has
it's a
been
pleasure. It's
a
really, I love
fantastic
I
evening.
love doing this, and
Oh my gosh.
love you guys. And I would spend more time at SABR meetings if I wasn't working till 5 a.m. changing the number of Tommy John surgeries. I
Oh,
was
Lord.
literally going through tonight to count the number of guys who've had 2 and 3.
Oh,
Let me pose a question to you, may I?
sure. Go ahead.
If I were to say the following to you, Shohei Ohtani should refuse to pitch for the Los Angeles Dodgers, what would you think?
Ooh. I would think that he would have to weigh where he is going to create the most value for his team. But there's so much money involved here in endorsements.
He's not losing money.
No, he's not going to lose money or anything. But the value is already created in so much. I would say that Shohei should probably consider not pitching. I think his career would be longer.
They had this discussion 106 years ago.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, there you go.
Right.
There you go.
I mean, I think it's a legitimate question. Of course, you can't ask him because you can't get him to ask such a question. I always wanted to ask, and I keep asking all my Dodger pals to try to ask how much did he know about Babe Ruth growing up and the fact that he was doing both early in his career? And he did that form a challenge for him, or something to reach for. I just think, with 2 Tommy John surgeries already, I mean, Tommy John and an internal brace. Yeah.
I know. All right, before we go, we are back Monday, September 22nd with SABR member Craig Brown. This poor guy's got to follow up Jane Leavy, and his presentation, Team Color Before 1900, which teams had one and which teams didn't. The sign-up link is available. What's that?
Team Color, did you say?
Team Color Before 1900. Which teams had one and which teams didn't.
Out of color.
The sign-up link is available in the chapter meeting booklet and at the SABR events calendar. And finally, if you're a baseball fan watching on YouTube and you like what you see, please like this video and subscribe to our channel to be alerted to our weekly uploads. And if you are not yet a member, you need to join the Society for American Baseball Research, the premier baseball community, offering an amazing baseball buffet of options to explore your fandom. SABR boasts more than 80 regional chapters, over 35 different research committees, and innumerable opportunities to connect with baseball minds across the world. For more information, go to sabr.org today. Jane Leavy, you have my vote for the next commissionership.
Thank you.
Yes, they're applauding you. They're applauding you. Yes.
I just want to say, when I see how many women are high up in SABR, election offices, whatever they are, boards and things, that just makes me tingle.
I am honored to serve with several women on the board of directors for our great organization. And I cannot begin to tell you the level of brilliance in the room when they're there. It's just amazing to see.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
All right, everybody. Let's get everybody out of here.
All right.
Have a great night, and we'll see you Monday. Thank you, Jane.
Everybody.
Take care.
Bye.